Tokyo, the first time Shinzo Abe, Japan's prime minister, met President Xi Jinping of China, the body language told the story. Xi looked dour and stiff, turning away from Abe with pursed lips, as if someone had forced him into it after months of escalating tensions between their two nations. In the years since, relations have improved, but the two leaders have always kept at a distance. This past weekend, they met again on the sidelines of a regional summit meeting in Vietnam. This time, they shook hands and Xi flashed a grin. It was a sign, the Japanese news media suggested, of a potentially momentous shift in the region, with two longtime adversaries drawing closer as the United States under President Trump has created unease among allies about the role the United States will take in the region. To compensate, Japan and China are inching toward a possible reconciliation as they recognize the altered dynamics around the Pacific Rim. But with the two Asian powers long divided by disputes over history and territory, as well as testiness over influence in the region, it will take more than a few handshakes or a smile to cement a genuine realignment. In gesturing toward a new friendliness, Japan is motivated in part by the recognition that as the United States retreats, it needs stronger trade with China. Having watched Trump heap praise on Xi in Beijing last week, Japan is also propelled by fear that the United States may develop a closer rapport with China that would exclude Japan. And as China seeks to strengthen its power, it realizes it may have more success exerting authority in the region with Japan as a partner rather than a rival. At the same time, Trump's visit showed China that the United States is unlikely to get in its way, allowing a more confident Xi to be more generous toward Japan. What Trump represented was a real shock to the system of allies and the world, said Nick Bisley, Professor of International Relations at La Trobe University in Melbourne, Australia. The threat from North Korea is also naturally drawing China and Japan closer, although Abe has so far hewed closely to Trump's approach of calling for more pressure and sanctions. Abe appears keenly aware of Trump's erratic swings in opinions and loyalties. Japan is naturally wondering if the United States may make some kind of deal with China that could put Japan at a disadvantage, experts said. Standing behind that is kind of what you always find in Japan, that underlying fear of abandonment, said Daniel C. Snyder, a lecturer in East Asian Studies at Stanford University. All of that is within the broader context of huge Japanese mistrust and long-term apprehension about the growth of Chinese power, Snyder added, they understand that the Chinese see themselves as the natural hegemon, and in the Chinese worldview, the Japanese should be subordinate to them. As Abe and Xi take the first steps toward a better relationship, many obstacles remain. Neither country has given any ground in a territorial dispute over a set of islands in the East China Sea, known in Japan as the Senkaku and in China as the Diaoyu. China also still regularly objects to what it perceives as any sign that Japan is returning to its militaristic past, and carefully watches the debate in Japan about how much to develop the military's capabilities.